the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville Wolford agenda for council on Tuesday, April the 20th, 2021. The council meeting was scheduled to start at 1 p.m. Just dealing with some technology issues. We are now approximately 1:18 as we start our meeting. And an important notice, this meeting will be held electronically. In order to ensure transparency, the audio of this meeting will be live streamed and posted on the website immediately following adjournment of the meeting. And our meeting agenda is for our budget, so I would call out names for a mover and a seconder for the this afternoon's agenda. So I'd ask Mr. Cameron, will you make that motion, sir?
Yeah, and I have one question. Maybe we can clarify before we move on.
Well,
the library doesn't seem to be on our agenda.
Sorry, let's get the motion, and then we can go with any questions about it. All right, Mr. Cameron?
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's going to be moved by Mr. Cameron and seconder, Mr. Foster.
Seconded.
Seconder, Mr. Foster?
Yes, I'm seconding.
Thank you. So the motion would read, be it hereby resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Marrickville Wolford does hereby approve the agenda of the special council meeting of April the 20th, 2021 as circulated, and it's for the budget, which does include the library is included in our discussions this afternoon. So it's included in the budget deliberations, Mr. Cameron.
Thank you kindly.
Okay,
It just wasn't indicated on the agenda, that's all.
Yep, fair enough.
Thank you.
And so members, I will accept the motion as circulated. All in favor, and I'll just go quickly around the table. Mr. Malloy, you're in favor?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
In favor.
Thank you. Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
And Mr. Halpney?
Yes.
Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you. So a continuation of our meeting a little while ago. We've called the meeting to order. I'd ask if anybody has any has a pecuniary interest, and if they do, what is the general nature thereof. So I'm asking members, does anyone have a pecuniary interest? Mr. Malloy?
No. No.
Thank you. Mr. Foster?
No.
Mr. Cameron?
No.
Mr. Halpney?
No.
Nor do I, so we'll move on to, actually, that should have been done prior to approving the agenda. My apologies for that. Affirmative paper on the desk in front of me. So next we're moving forward with the draft operating budget, and we have the draft capital budget and the draft water and wastewater. And members, you do have your packages in front of you. There were some questions that members had in advance of the meeting, and the response from staff, and they've been circulated to everybody. So with that,
What's the question?
there were there were a number of questions. I can just briefly highlight the question and the answer, but that was circulated by staff to all members of council.
I just need a quick question.
Sorry, who is speaking, please?
Timothy.
Yes, you have a question, sir?
Yeah, just a real quick one.
Yes.
Just as to what Michael asked a couple minutes ago, we're doing the library budget today?
Just get a clarification from staff on that, please.
Thank you, Worship. It is to be discussed today. It's included in the package that was provided to council. Is that correct, Kirsten?
I don't think so. I don't have it.
I believe it was included in last week's materials. Or no, the week before, when Mary Kate was on the line to discuss it with us. We discussed her budget. Today we'll be discussing their ask in our budget. What they're requesting will be discussed in our budget.
Right. Did everybody hear the response?
No.
The library budget was discussed at the first council meeting where we made the decision, to just go over it briefly. That's when Mary Kate was on the line, and she did present the library budget to council. So today we will be dealing with their ask to us.
Sorry, specifically not the library budget. We did receive that, today in our
Yep.
budget, we are dealing with the ask that was in the library budget.
Okay, just looking for clarification.
Yep, no, good question. So, moving on, as we've done in the past, we'll go through each section. And if there are any questions from council, staff are here to answer those questions. And just for clarification, everybody did receive, as had been requested by council, our reserves and reserve funds and their balances. So you do have that in your as well. So the first page in the terms of the draft budget is the very high level numbers of operating and it goes through administration, fire, et cetera, and then down to capital. So then if you turn to the next page, that's where we get into the various sections. And we'll go through the one section at a time and ask if there are any questions on the line items within that in that section. So the first section is administration, and there is the first section would be revenues. Are there any questions on that section? And if you do, please state your name and then ask the question.
Certainly. Timothy again, as you go through this, could you please itemize the page that we're on, not just the headings?
Yeah, unfortunately, the pages are not numbered, but if you look in your tabs, it's administration.
Okay,
And then if you do have a question, just indicate the line item, and then we can, well, my apologies. So each section does have numbers on the page. Thank you for that. So we're on page 1 of administration. And
Okay.
so I ask, does anyone have any questions under the revenue section?
not I.
No, okay, you don't have to say no, I just have to, if anybody does have a question, state your name so we know who you are and then ask the question. So if we're good with that section, we'll move down to the next section under administration, which is provincial grants. And then the next section would be federal grants. And the next section is capital grants. And then the next section is general government. So I haven't heard anybody indicate they have a question on that section of administration on page 1. So we turn the page to page 2. It's a continuation of administration under that general government.
It's Mike Cameron here. May I make a comment for a second?
Yes?
I haven't had any questions on any of the following asks because those are questions that we submitted to staff and staff has answered my questions. However, I don't know what everybody else has asked.
Nobody else submitted any questions. Had they, there would have been an answer and circulated similar to yours.
So nobody sent in any questions like we were supposed to? No?
Well, not, if you had any questions, we were asked to send them in and nobody else sent in any questions.
Oh, okay.
So,
Did everybody receive a copy of the questions that I had sent in?
as I said, I guess twice now, yes, everybody received a copy of the questions and the responses.
It's the voices keep fading in and out, and there's some echoing in the background occasionally, so sometimes it's hard to understand what you're saying.
Okay. Did you hear me clear? Did you hear my response to your comment or question?
Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, I just thought that, perhaps it would have been best, I guess, to read through some of the questions so the public has an awareness of what we've been discussing, but if nobody feels that's necessary, I guess I'm ready to move on.
I can certainly, I don't have any problem indicating what the questions are. If members want a pause, I can read them out loud, and I'll do that right now. will we receive a copy of the reserve amounts? And the answer was yes. Their reserve amounts will be shown in the 2020 financial statements. Staff will also provide a copy for your working meeting, which I indicated at the beginning of the meeting. We all have a copy of that, of the reserves. Will we receive a copy of the 2020 auditor's report? And has been indicated previously by staff, yes, the financial statements are presented to council each year by the auditor, typically in May. Federal grants under administration number 26. Summer students with this grant also cover COVID-19 protocols in order to keep everyone safe. And the response is no, the grant only covers the portion of salary. Any expenses for keeping summer students safe will come from the same source as other staff. For under rec programs, number 4 are all camp activities to be held outdoors. Not so much a budget question, but a good one under especially what's been happening since last Friday with the extension of the stay at home and the changing rules of engagement, if you will. But the response at the time from staff was the pandemic regulations are constantly evolving, and the regulations in place at this time will dictate whether we are able to run a summer camp program. In any case, you cannot keep the kids outside or exposed to the elements all the time. Next question was emergency and protective services. Number 30, bunker gear is cost to replace all, some, or just new recruits. And the response is the cost is to outfit 4 new recruits at approximately $14,000. The SCBA masks are $3,000, pagers at $2,000, and the rest of the cost is to replace expired bunker gear. And number 35, why the large increase in training costs? Increase in training costs is for the new online program and new recruit training for 4 recruits. Why has there been no measures put in place to deliver this service to residents in Jasper? And we'll come back to this question in a second. Please specify which service you're referring to. I'll come back to that in a moment. Landfill number 85, what were the increased costs? Line 85 is revenue. This increased cost comment refers to the increase in expenses for garbage pickup and recycling in 2020 actuals. Economic development, red expenses, number 58, contract salaries, and we are increasing the number of employees covered. Are we increasing the number of employees to cover under this grant? And staff are going to speak to that, I think, if not today, later, but the response is staff have been able to negotiate the extension of the RED program until the end of the year. There are no other new positions beyond what council has already approved in camera. Further discussion would need to be in camera. Recommended capital projects, there is a reference to a road needs study. Will council receive this report? Yes. Our consultant will present the asset management plan with the roads needs study feeds in, and which the road needs study feeds into once the plan is complete. New fire truck, what is the criteria that must be met to consider a new purchase? The current pumper truck does not meet provincial Class A pumper regulations. We are replacing 2 trucks with 1. Why is HF McLean not listed on the recommended list? Staff have provided council with the public correspondence on this issue in accordance with direction from council as a whole to allow council to consider this item during the budget process. The roads with existing tar and chip surface treatment require a maintenance lift every 5 to 7 years or they degrade, and this is identified in the asset management plan. That is why they are listed on the recommended list. And as indicated, we'll go back to question number 6. I think that these are from Mr. Cameron. So Mr. Cameron, your question is why has there been no measures put in place to deliver this service to our residents in Jasper? And what is the service you're referring to?
It was referring to the snow clearing of the sidewalk.
Okay. Yes, I think that's been responded to earlier, that it's not a matter of us having the capacity, or there had been a local resident had been trying to do it, and there aren't any contractors that want to take on the job, so we are unable to provide that service. So that's the response to that. So we'll get back to, and there weren't any other questions submitted from council members. So if we go back to page 2 under administration, Top of the page, are there any questions on that section? Not hearing any. The next section would be tile drainage. Any questions under that? And the next section would be under expenses, council. Any questions under that section? Not hearing any. Under administration, are there any questions on that section? If not, we'll turn the page. So we're on page 3, a continuation of administration. Again, the top of the page, we're going line item 93 down to 114. Are there any questions on that section? Not hearing any. I'll move down to other. Any questions under other?
Your Worship, Foster?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, sorry, just a little slogan off mute button here. Under administration, line item 114, COVID,
Yes.
our 2020 actuals were over 25,000, but our 2021 budget is only $1,000. Do we anticipate that this is going to be over like now? with no end in sight, is $1,000 sufficient in the COVID file?
And I think what staff are indicating are there aren't any, we'll say, hard expenses expected to be spent under administration, i.e. in the municipal office. And I'm turning to staff, and just bear with me, and I think our manager, our treasurer is going to respond to that.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. What we did this year is we broke out the COVID expenses more towards the individual budget areas. So there's a large cleaning expense under recreation for public washrooms, and so we have just shifted them to the various departments.
Oh, that's received. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. And continuing on, I didn't hear any questions under other. We'll move down to any questions under grants. None noted. Under tile drainage, any questions?
Actually, I have one question, if you can just go back.
Sorry, again, just for the record, your name and then your question and line item and question.
It's Timothy.
Thank you.
Backup grant, line 126, benches. What's that?
And I believe our manager of operations, Mr. Cole, is going to respond to that.
Your Worship, that's the new bench program we put in place, and it's an in and out. The village purchases the bench, and then the person that dedicated the bench refunds the municipality.
Okay.
You heard that all right, Mr. Malloy?
Yeah, good
Yep.
enough, thank you.
Yeah, so that's the expense number, and I don't have the page, but there'd be a revenue line to offset it. And I believe those are the 3 benches that we've already indicated. I think there's one at the Cenotaph, one at the soon to be called Village Park, and a third one over in the area of the library. That would be the 3, okay? And so I didn't hear any questions under tile drainage and transfers to reserves. If there aren't any questions on page 3, we moved over to page 4, again, continuation of administration. It's indicating all of the various transfer to reserves. If there aren't any questions there, we then move to the tab Emergency and Protective Services. So that's page 1 of that section. And the first is Fire Department revenues. Are there any questions in that section, members? Noted, and then we'll go down to expenses, and we'll take right from the line 11 right to the bottom of the page 44. So if there are any questions, please state your name, the line item, and the question. I don't mean to be rushing, but I would assume if anybody does have a question, you certainly, I know members always go over our budget line by line very, very carefully, and which is good. And I'm not hearing any questions, so we would turn to page 2, again, continuation of emergency and protective services. And we'll go down to the first section, lines 1 to 51. Not hearing any questions there. We'll move down to the section police. We have the revenue and the expenses. And we get down near the bottom of the page. We have crossing guard, CEMC, animal control. Again, not hearing any questions. And that's page 2 of Emergency and Protective Services. So we turn to page 3, continuation. And we have under bylaw, we have revenues and expenses.
It's Mike Cameron here. I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, sir. Line item and the question?
Yeah, it's current page, we're on 3, and the line item is 105. And the question is, it states by law enforcement training. See that we're not putting any money towards training for 2021. Is there any reason why that's happening?
I'm going to may get a response from our manager of operations that typically the training or programs offered by the province, and at the moment they're not offering any programs because of COVID. And I'll just get Mr. Cole to speak to that.
Your Worship, that is correct. There's most of the training for the bylaw is in-person training, and it's not being offered at this time. So we just anticipated a no cost for training it this year.
Yeah. So there sort of if I could build on Mr. Cameron's question, if there was training available that we knew of, we would be budgeting. And if something comes up later in the year, I don't want to say it'd be a surprise, but we would deal with that opportunity then. But because there isn't anything on the horizon because of COVID, you're budgeting 0 at this point?
Your Worship, that's correct.
Yeah,
But
okay.
we would absolutely take advantage if there was something that come up.
Did you hear the responses already, Mr. Cameron?
Yes, I did. Thank you kindly.
No, that's great. Good question. Thank you.
Bob Foster, I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, go ahead, sir. Line item and the question.
Line item is 98, bylaw enforcement salary. Notice the allocation for the 2021 salary is half of the allocation from the 2020 budget. Is more bylaw officer salary being paid to Public Works? Is he spending more hours there, or why the significant reduction?
Yes, because he is working more hours in Public Works, so I'm trying to split it properly, the expense between the two. So the rest of the salary would be allocated to Public Works.
Message received. Thank you.
There aren't any other questions. We'll move to the next section, which is Public Works. Page 1. So Public Works, first section is under Streets is revenue. And if there aren't any questions there, we'll go down to expenses. That'll be line, excuse me a moment. Pardon me. Line item 10 down to 43.
It's Mike Cameron here.
Yes, question, sir.
Yeah, under number 18, just just to discuss the sidewalk in Jasper once again. I realize that you answered it, we couldn't get anybody to do that, but I'd like to know if there's any discussion, ongoing discussion with Public Works that we somehow come up with a plan on how we can take over and start managing that sidewalk on our own without reaching out for a contractor.
Well,
Is there
perhaps we
any way
could,
that...
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, go ahead. So my
I just
suggestion,
want to know...
yeah, I'm building on your suggestion, we can ask staff to bring back a report as to what's been done in the past and, you know, what we tried to do, you know, what worked, what didn't work, and sort of, which essentially outlines why there's a challenge to be able to do it at all. So,
Yeah, understood. Just that our very first budget in 2018, I recall having a conversation that we, as we progressed into our mandate, that we come up with some form of means of managing that. We had talked about buying a trailer, which would be multifunctional with other departments, that we could transport our little sidewalk machine down there and eventually take over the sidewalk on our own as part of our process. I realize there's a challenge during a snowstorm and moving equipment over, but you know, after the storm and after the county has done their cleanup, you know, it might be something that we'd like to look into. You know, these are also taxpayers paying the same tax rates, perhaps not getting quite the same service as we are giving to others. So it would be something that I think we should move forward on and come up with some kind of a strategy so that we could include this in our operation. Thank you.
yeah, I think staff probably be able to bring out back you know, a copy of a memo that's been provided to us previously, which is it's not sustainable to do. You know, certainly, you know, the local person was not able to do it. That the staff had tried. Staff reached out to all the local, we'll call it local contractors, and it was a contract / job they did not want to do. And for municipal staff, yeah, it would be an investment in, because our Kubota is too big for the sidewalk. To go with a snow blower, it ends up being the very same challenge as the local resident had, and that is the county plow goes by multiple times during the daytime, probably 5 times, and every time you go out, you know, if there's snow there, it starts to freeze, and then a regular snow blower doesn't go through it. So it's not, as staff have indicated, it's not sustainable to be able to keep the sidewalk cleared, and that's why the recommendation was, and it was a pilot project that we all acknowledge, and it's not unlike what other municipalities do in their area, and that is, you know, close the sidewalks on municipal and or county sidewalk bridges. I know certainly that's what Elizabethtown Kitley does. So it was not at all for a want of or lack of trying. It's just not a sustainable service that can be provided, unfortunately. So we'll move on to any other questions under page 1 of Public Works. I'm not hearing any. We'll turn to page 2. And we'll look at the complete page, lines 44 down to, we're down to 81. And if there aren't any questions there, we'll go to landfill, which is the bottom of the page, and that's the revenue.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, again, a little slow getting off the mute button here. Item 49, it's Paul Foster, by the way, item 49.
Yes. Go ahead with your question.
Just a question for the treasurer, so that's a debt that we make payments on annually, like identical price, so I assume that's what it is.
Yep, that's correct. I believe the majority of that cost was for the tar and chip program, I think. So yeah, that's an annual payment.
That's received, thank you.
You're welcome.
Not hearing any other questions. Again, not wanting to rush council, but to repeat, you've all had your packages for some time, so I'm sure you had questions. You ready for them? We'll turn then to page 3, still under Public Works. Not hearing any indication of any questions. We'll turn the page, and our next section is Economic Development. First section is planning and building, so it's the revenue, then the expenses, under building, revenue, and expenses. Not hearing any indication of any questions. Then turn to page 2, continuation under planning and building. Not hearing any questions there. Turn to, sorry, that was, I'd indicated economic development. That was a continuation under the umbrella, I guess, of Public Works then into the building. And now we're under economic development. The first section is expenses. Then the red program revenue. And then the road program expenses. And again, I think it has been indicated by staff, the red program has been extended to the end, to December 31st of this year.
Correct, Your Worship, if I may. So, I'm very pleased to make council aware, as we did with Councillor Cameron's question, that staff have been able to negotiate an extension on the grant until the end of this year.
That's great.
Also happy to tell you that Stacey Lloyd has accepted the position of Manager of Community Development with the village. So we will be proceeding with filling the economic development position with a temporary staff person as well.
That's great. Yeah, it was, which is a, I guess, finalizing the outline the staff had presented to council last year, I think it was, moved from an organizational perspective.
Correct, Your Worship. And all of that, the cost for all of those positions is already incorporated into the draft budget before you take.
Yeah, so not any new money in quotation marks.
That's correct.
Yeah, great, thank you. Sorry,
Hello, it's Timothy here. Can I have one quick question under expenses, please?
yes, sorry, Timothy, yes, what line item?
4.
Under expenses, yes, yeah, Cenotaph?
Yeah, why the great increase? I mean, it went from 2,200 to 13,000.
Sorry, that's line item 5. Toilet.
Yeah, my mistake.
Toilet rentals. I'll let Mr. Cole respond to that.
Your Worship, the increased cost is due to having to clean them so often. So that's where we actually tag the cleaning item to go with the rental.
Yeah. So I'm not sure you heard that, Mr. Malloy. So part of the guidelines of COVID, so the washrooms are sanitized every 2 hours, 7 days a week, from 10 a.m. till 6 p.m.
Good enough. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike Cameron here, I have a question.
Yes, sir. Line item and the question?
Yeah, it's under red revenue, number 54 for the red grant program. I recall that upgrading our website was part of that original red grant when it was first received by previous council. Are we making any development on this website upgrade? We haven't heard anything for a couple of years on that. I was wondering if that was still the focus of staff, and if we have any indication when they'll be delivering a new website.
Yeah, and yeah, staff can answer. Yeah, I think the last update, if you will, was about a year ago, just before the pandemic, unfortunately. And Mr. Robertson?
Certainly, Your Worship, thank you. So you're correct, the pandemic did set several things off on their side. That is all of the requirements of the RED grant will be delivered before the end of this year. It's a requirement of our contract.
Super, which includes the website.
The website is
Awesome.
part of that. Thank
That's
you.
great. Okay, thank you very much. You heard the response. Heard the response. All right, Mr. Cameron.
Thank you, I did.
Yep, great.
Mr. Mayor, Officer,
Yes, line item and question, sir.
under Economic Development, line item 3, Active and Tourism Depot Utilities. So the $2,000, is that just an arbitrary figure? Is that what we picked out of the budget? Sorry.
And our treasurer can respond to that, sir.
No, that's not arbitrary, and the number, the actuals in 2020 was actually $2,015.
So if it was, the actual was 2015 and 2020 when there were no tourists, you think 2,000 will be sufficient? Or 2021 when we might have tourists coming in?
Well, I have compared it to the 2018 and 2019 actuals as well, so it seems fairly reasonable.
Okay. See, so there is a water meter there, is what you're telling me.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
If there aren't any other questions, we'll go to the next section, which is recreation. And the first section is community center revenue. And as you can see with, I'm going to be presumptive here, but the reason that staff have not put in any revenue is because of COVID and the guidelines, and our treasurer is nodding very assertively, yes, that is the reason why they have not put any revenue in there. And then the next section would be under expenses. And then we go down to the next section would be the outdoor rink.
Mike Cameron here, I have a question.
Yes, sir. Line item and the question, please.
Under outdoor rink expenses, line 34, for rink contract, are we going to issue this well in advance of the season to ensure that we have somebody to take care of the rink this coming winter?
Yep. Typically, very early on, the municipality looks to contract that out, and hopefully this year we won't have the issues and challenges that we're facing individuals who are interested in the rink position because of COVID and other things. Which anyway, suffice to say that, you know, as in all years, last year included, this year moving forward, we will be hiring a rink attendant and hopefully secure that very early on with early on advertising or seeking someone to fulfill that position.
If I may, Your Worship, just a quick comment. Last year was not left any later than it normally is.
Yeah.
But as you know, there are many government programs and subsidies implemented for different residents and employees and so forth. Unfortunately, that changed the circumstances for our contractor, so we weren't aware that service wasn't going to be provided till late in the season. And as you know, we had a very mild winter as well leading into the new year.
Indeed, yeah, there are a number of factors, but yeah, COVID certainly had a big impact, and with let's hope we're not in the same circumstance with COVID, but staff are well aware that, you know, the potential is there, and we'll secure the position as early as possible. So, good question. Thank you, Mr. Cameron. Any other questions on that page?
Yes, Timothy here.
Yes, Timothy. And line item in question, please.
Yes, please. Outdoor rink, item 30, line 35.
Yes.
Is it Just indicate that we didn't clean the washrooms in the rink house prior to this year.
I'm sorry, repeat the question?
It indicates, anyway, that we haven't been cleaning the rink house washrooms. Because if you look at it, 2021, we've got an estimated cost of $937. Everything prior to that is blank.
So typically what happens, the contractor for the outdoor rink is also responsible for the cleaning of the washroom. So this year, even though we didn't have a contractor, we did have the washroom open to the public, and we contracted that out. And that needed to be sanitized every 2 hours, Monday to Sunday, 10 a.m.
No problem.
Well, just going to get it out there, it's 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. while the rink was open. And I'll let we'll have some clarification from staff, but I've got two hands going up. I'll go to Mr. Cole first.
Your worship, just to clarify, the rink was was cleaned up till 10 p.m.
Up until 10 p.m., thank you.
Yes.
7 days a week.
Correct.
And after the rink closed for the season, the rink, that washroom was still open Monday to Sunday, 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. There we go. Anyway, that is the reason why that expense is there, Mr. Malloy. And our
And I also
treasurer
just
wants to make a
wanted-
comment as well. Go ahead, Kirsten.
Yeah, this relates back to a question I think maybe Bob or Tim had about why we don't have any COVID costs under admin. This is because we have redistributed them to the proper departments.
Right.
So we would have had cleaning costs in 2020, but they would have been under the admin COVID expenses line item.
Hope all of council caught that. Remember there was the earlier question about COVID costs, and Kirsten indicated that they've allocated them to the various section of the budget that they would fall under. So thanks very much, Kirsten, for that. If there aren't any questions on that page, we turn to the page 2. And if there aren't any questions, recreation expenses, museum expenses. Not hearing any questions. We'll turn to the next section, which is capital. And you can see we did have had some discussion on that in our earlier budget deliberations under the recommended capital projects as outlined, and then it's the carry forward projects from last year. And you remember, members, at our last council meeting, we did the because we collected those dollars, the carry forward dollars last year, we put them in a reserve, transfer them to reserve, and we bring those monies out of the reserve into the 2021 budget to do those projects that we had already approved last year. So we just hold down to line 32. Any questions? Not hearing any.
I have a question.
And is that Mr. Cameron? Yes, go ahead, sir.
Mike Cameron, I have a question.
Yep, and line item and question, sir.
Line item 2 for the Kubota, where I guess looks like we're going to be replacing it. What year is our current Kubota?
And Mr. Cole?
No, Your Worship, it's the current one we have is 2017.
Did you hear that, Mr.?
2017?
Yeah, so
So it's only a couple of years old. How many hours are we operating on that machine at present? Any idea, Brett?
So just to clarify, if I might, so when you say 20, so this would have been 5 winters it's been used?
Correct.
Thank you. And then Mr. Cameron's question, do we know what kind of hours are on it?
I would say close to 2,000 hours right now.
Okay.
Okay.
And, 2,000 hours is getting up there. It probably is time to consider trading in. have a couple other questions about our tar and chip that we want to apply, or sorry, our slurry that we want to apply to our tar and chip roads, which are indicated here on our budget. When we had discussed this in person, when we were in council chambers there a week and a half ago, there was an indication that the roads are starting to deteriorate. That's why they want to expedite and get the project up and running.
Oh, just hold on a moment, folks. We're getting some really bad feedback, so just hold on one moment.
Yeah.
Not sure what that was. Just going to do a roll call, make sure everybody's still there. Are you still there, Mr. Halpney? Are you still there, Don?
Yeah.
Great. Are you still there, Timothy?
Yes.
And Mr. Foster?
Yes, still here.
Okay, I'm not sure what that feedback was, so back to you, Mr. Cameron. You have a question under regarding tar and chip.
Yeah, it's for the slurry application. We've missed the target dates on these roads, and they've gone past the intended time for the slurry to be applied. It was indicated by the CAO that some of these roads are in a state where they're about to start to fall apart. By applying, I mean, it's a significant amount of money. I believe it was over 500 and some thousand for the slurry and the ditching. I was wondering if it might be something that we may look at. How long is this slurry going to extend the life of the road, considering that we've missed those target dates over the last 4 or 5, 6 years on some of them, and haven't applied it when we were supposed to? By doing it now, are we going to extend the life of that tar and chip road so that it's worth the money that we're spending, or would we be better off to take a look at perhaps replacing the roads through the grant program in the coming future?
Well, certainly know whenever there is a grant program, certainly staff would seize on that, bring it to council's attention. So there typically are not grant programs for municipal roads, unfortunately. I've had this conversation, I know at the provincial level when they have budget consultations. Often the grant programs don't align with municipal needs. They tend to align with more provincial needs, so not to our benefit. And in terms of timing, it varies from year to year. The state of a road, I know, for example, the other year, staff were looking actually at a grant program to pave Reed Street, and municipalities didn't qualify for it in terms of a singular municipal road only. It has to be, in quotation marks, the province's definition of a connecting link. Reed Street didn't, and then the other part can be the timing when a contractor can do it. But I'll turn it over to Mr. Cole. I know from previous experience, maintaining a tar and chip road by continuing to apply the a fresh lift is a good thing, and so I don't think we've any road that's in the state where you have to I'll say pulverize the road and start all over again. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Cole for any additional information would be appropriate to provide. Mr. Cole.
Your Worship, just to clarify a couple of things for Councillor Cameron. One, I had a consultant come from one of the companies that provides the tar and chip on the roads to assess the roads to make sure they were in good shape to accept it, and they are. He felt all roads were good candidates for another lift of tar and chip. It would extend their life period by another 5 to 7 years. As it's a regular maintenance lift that needs to be done on these roads. What we're doing this year, you'll see, is a fog seal as well. That's something new that they've come out with in the past few years. It has been very, very good, and may even extend the life of the road longer as it seals it up more like an asphalt surface. Many municipalities have had great results from it, and I went and toured a bunch of roads that have had it done, and it looks like a very good product. So We're hoping that'll extend it beyond the 7-year term with the new fog seal program as well.
So just to, on that point, Mr. Cole, so the roads that are proposed to be, have another application of tarnship, this is this, I'll say call it new product or process in terms of the tarnship?
Newer, it's been around for a few years, and it's had great results. So we felt it was a good product to apply after to lengthen the life of the road, hopefully, and to better seal it.
Yeah, so yeah, it's not only is it, as Mr. Cameron was indicating, maintaining the township, it'll actually perhaps enhance them a bit in the sense that we'll get more years out of them than you might on average.
Correct.
That's great, thank you. Are there any other questions under that first section of Public Works?
Yeah, I have another question.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Cameron, and the line item?
Okay. Bear with me for a second here. I'm just trying to. The line number 4 under replacing the fire and public works truck, a $60,000 cost, replacing the 2002 truck. Is that replacing the actual truck that the fire chief uses, or is that replacing the other pickup that we have?
And I'll ask our fire chief, Mr. Cole, to respond to that.
Your worship, Councillor Cameron, it's replacing, so the current truck that the fire chief and manager of operations is using now would get moved to Public Works because it's already outfitted with heavier suspension and the plow and harness hookup. It would move to Public Works to replace the 2002 truck, and then the manager and fire chief's truck would be replaced with the new one.
Okay, and just a subsequent question to that, if you don't mind, Mr. Cole. We just outfitted that vehicle with a bunch of lights for the fire department for when you're going to a fire call. What was the cost for that, and are we able to recoup that cost by removing all these lights and so on and so forth, and moving it over to the new truck, or do we have to outfit the new truck completely?
Your worship, the cost was roughly about $2,500, I believe, for the lighting package that's on that truck now, and it will all be removed and put into the new vehicle. So there won't be an expense for new lighting, just to change them over.
Did you hear that all right, Mr. Cameron?
Oh, I did. Thank you very much.
Great, okay, thank you. Not hearing any other questions? Down to,
Well, I have one more question. If nobody else has any questions.
yeah, go ahead, Mr. Cameron. Line item and question.
Yeah, the number 15, the fire rescue pumper truck. What indicated here that we're putting 175 into reserve this year and the following year for the purchase of a new truck. I was wondering if there was any consideration on having our other truck recertified to extend the life of that truck. According to insurance, the insurance law we require is one Class A, and we currently have a Class A in our ladder pumper truck that we have. It's a 2017. Typically, the year is 12 to 15 years, a life cycle on these trucks. I was concerned that maybe we're moving a bit too quickly on purchasing a brand new truck, and that we should perhaps continue down the line of putting money into the reserves for a future date. All our current trucks are low mileage, all seem to be in good shape body-wise, and we are meeting all the requirements set out for us to do so by operating a Class A, and then we have the other two Class Bs. So I was wondering why the fire chief felt that it was important that we buy a newer truck when we still have operations with our trucks that we have.
Okay, and I'll turn to Mr. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cameron. And Chief Cole.
Your worship, it was, a lot of thought went into this, but the current pumper truck that is not a Class A anymore is starting to degrade, have body issues and starting to have mechanical issues as well. It's a concern to have that truck. Myself, I find it a concern to have that truck as a frontline truck. The ladder truck, I consider a ladder truck, an aerial with a pump on it. It is currently a Class A pump, but does not carry much water. The pump 4 that would be replaced is our frontline truck for grass fires, car fires, that sort of nature of call. And we'd also be replacing our rescue truck, which is currently very top heavy and not an easy vehicle to drive on the roadways. So we'd be replacing 2 trucks with the 1 truck to make it safer and to be able to take more firefighters to a scene.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. And can you down, for them, we know what the carry forward items are. We're down to the additional items, which are line item 33 down to 38.
Yes, I have a question, Mr. Mayor. This is Councillor Foster.
Yes, line item in question, sir.
Yeah, so 36, H.F. McLean. In all of our discussions about H.F. McLean and the correspondence we've received from residents, I haven't heard anyone talk about using tar and chip on H.F. McLean as an alternative to a full lift. I realize that the $120,000 suggestion for paving is not sufficient by any means, but would this be a more affordable project if it was tar and chip?
Well, there's a bit of silence in the room that, no, we have not had that discussion. And while we are being extremely mindful of the budget this year, as we are in all years, but a great deal of care and consideration has been taken by staff to bring forward a budget that it's zero, other than additional items that we would add to it. There are potentially 2 roads for consideration, and one could be H.F. McLean and another would be Corktown Road. I know I've had people inquiring about that. Both or either one would not necessarily be a 1-year project, given the potential costs, because it isn't just the cost of the actual tar and chip. It's bringing the base up to standard. It's potentially improving the ditching, certainly the cross culverts, and so it could be a road project that might be over 2, potentially 3 years if you look at a road such as Corktown Road. However, it'd be definitely a valued investment. I know every year both roads receive spring gravel, which enhances the gravel road, and I think that's something that we could ask staff, while we may not do it in this year's budget in terms of allocating specific dollars in the budget. Over the course of the year, we could look at, and it doesn't have to be those 2 roads, but use them as an example, H.F. McLean and Corktown Road, what needs to be done, what the cost, I'll use my word, guesstimate would be, and let's take a road like Corktown Road, and staff have also indicated about the road's needs analysis. Certainly, information out of there, but does all of Corktown Road need the base enhanced? Not necessarily. Some members will recall the municipality invested significant dollars to bring the Corktown Road up to a very good standard, from the corner of Reed Street up to, and I probably shouldn't mention people's names, but everybody would know that the first curve in the road, if you will, and yet past that may places significant base work. So we can ask staff to bring forward, call it that picture of the amount of work that needs to be done, ditching, culverts, base, and then let's say it's tar and chip, what those guesstimates would be. Would either road, would it be a 1-year project? Would it be better suited to do, so you don't raise expectations beyond the point of being able to deliver of let's say, Corktown Road? It may well indeed, take a full year to bring the base up to an appropriate standard and do the culverts, and then the following year could be tar and chip. If everybody's in agreement, we can give that direction to staff to bring forward that information. Obviously not at the next council meeting, because I don't think we were considering doing that in this year's budget. But staff could show us how we have dollars in reserve, and we could start allocating those dollars over the course of the year to a specific road project. And obviously in future year budgets, adding to that amount to actually get the project underway, should council approve it at that point. A lot of verbiage there, but and staff are nodding that they can do that. If we can leave it at that, members, staff can bring that information to us. It would be nice to have well before the end of the year. Certainly not in the next week or two. That perhaps by late spring, early summer, end of June kind of thing, where and council can have that very strategic conversation in terms of how we build out the plan, how we're going to and have estimated dollars, where those dollars that come from, how much of our reserves that taxpayers have contributed to, and we can utilize those dollars to enhance our some of our roads. So staff are indicating that they will do that, and that kind of a timeline, June-ish, plus or minus, they can bring that forward for council's consideration. So back to your actual to your question, Mr. Foster. Tar and chip, and I think Mr. Cole indicated earlier, with whether it's an enhanced formula or a product, at any rate, tar and chip, it's the product is improving by its formula over the years, by those people that do the application, and it's a very good product. We all know the many roads we have, tar and chip, are very decent roads to drive on, and are more than a reasonable alternative than going to the full paving. And again, certainly you can look at that number too, is that staff will bring forward just to do a comparison. But if anybody anybody listening, what's a tar and chip road like? Obviously other than the ones that need a bit of repair, but just a lot of people use Reed Street, whether they're coming, going to the landfill on Wednesday and Saturday from the urban part of the municipality, and from the folks in the rural part, whether they're coming to the municipal office in normal years, and there's not a pandemic, but certainly to the fairgrounds, recreational grounds, our library. So everybody knows what a good quality product tar and chip is, and a very much more cost effective in where it's warranted than paving. So good question, Mr. Foster, and it opens up some opportunities for council consideration on some roads. Can have that conversation in quotation marks in the near future to look at what we can do in the years to come. There aren't any other. Sorry, are there any other questions on that page or on that subject? Was that Mr. Foster?
Mike Cameron here. I just
sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Cameron. Yeah. Line item.
I want to follow up on what you had indicated in Mr. Foster's question. I think it's important for us to start adding roads into our budgets. Our road system in Wolford especially, and there are a lot of roads within the village that are in need of repair or rebuild. So I think having a conversation this year and moving on H.F. McLean, it's been a request for the last since 2018, indicated so in the 2014 asset management study that previous council has done. The significant dollars are indicated on that document, into the millions of dollars. So I think starting to include roads in our budget is something that we should have moved on earlier, but I'm happy that the mayor is having this conversation and allowing this to move forward. I anticipate that we'll have a lot of conversation on this.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it's important to note that, not just this term, in previous terms, the municipality has invested significantly in our roads. Sometimes a little more noticeable perhaps in the rural area. There's certainly a lot more kilometers in the rural area than in the urban area. And the challenge in the urban area is not just the road surface. I think it was our previous meeting, you need to take into consideration, if you're going to do something to the road surface in the urban area, you need to understand what's below the surface, i.e., the water and sewer piping. And, so if you're going to do the road, you do that work at the same time. And I know whatever the number of years ago was, 3 or 4 years ago, a significant project that the municipality undertook, St. Patrick Street, if I have the right street, and utilized a significant amount of our reserves. And appropriately so, because it was, that was grant money that, we did qualify for. At any rate, as recommended by our auditor 2-3 years ago now, to rebuild our reserves, we've done that, and you can see from the information that council requested and staff provided in terms of our reserves, we are in a, I'll put it in quotation marks, healthy position. We've reduced our debt from moderate to low. Nonetheless, we still have debt. So by this council having, good budgets to follow the recommendations of our auditor, we're in a position where we can look at, on behalf of the taxpayers who contributed, investing those dollars in our infrastructure. And, as Mr. Cameron and Mr. Foster are indicating, these are good conversations to have now, so we can be prepared to do more in terms of enhancing and all good conversations to have moving forward. So, if there aren't any other questions on that page,
Yes, actually, just one more, please.
Mr. Malloy, yes, line item and question, sir.
Sure, line item 32, still building. Correct me if I'm wrong, have we not been talking about that building altogether?
And I think Mr. Cole is going to respond to that.
Sorry, Your Worship, just clarification, he's asking about the landfill building?
I believe at line 32, LF, so that's landfill building. I think that's what you meant, Mr. Malloy?
Yes, correct?
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Cole.
Your Worship, yeah, we have already purchased the building for there, and it's sitting up at the top of the landfill, ready to be put in place. But we're awaiting hydro approval because we're putting underground infrastructure in, so there's no more overhead wires. And by the time we got hydro's approval last year, it was too late to do the trench. So we're going to begin work in the next couple of weeks to put that new building in place.
So
are these?
go ahead, Mr. Malloy.
On line 32, those represent the cost towards the new building.
So I think, actually, Mr. Malloy, if you look on line 24, carry forward projects from last year. So that line 32 is captured in that. Those are dollars collected from.
No, I just want clarification on line 32. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah. Your Worship, if I can clarify more, if he wants more clarification.
No, it's a real simple question. The number issued on line 32. That's the cost of placing a new building in location.
That's the carryover that's left. We've already purchased the building. That's the remaining funds to do the trench work and get the hydro and everything all set in place for the building.
And this will cover that.
Correct.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
And if there aren't any other questions on that page. And next we are on the water wastewater. And we're on page 1 of 2. Oh, sorry, page 1. If there aren't any questions on that page.
Yes, Mayor, Councilor Foster.
Yes, line item and question, and unfortunately, it's not showing up on my sheet as line items, so maybe you could go to what section and then the journal number, I guess, would be utilizing.
It's more of a question, I guess, a procedural question, perhaps, person. The cost allocations to water and sewer. The LCBO post office, Lions Park, they pay you at the commercial sewage rate? My question?
I would have to check their water account. The LCBO would definitely be commercial. The Lions Club, I'm not certain how they're set up.
Okay, I'm just wondering about billing, whether we're supporting them here. I understand we're going to support them, but whether or not the people who are paying for the sewage treatment plant are supporting them, or whether it's being paid. For example, if it's grants in lieu of taxes for the post office, whether or not the sewage treatment plant is getting a share of that money allocated to it.
Well, we wouldn't, from the PILs are under the tax revenue, but they would be receiving a water bill if they were on the LCBO, the water system, so they would be paying for the services, yes. Is that your question?
I could barely hear it. Okay, we can save this for another time if we want to break it down further, but I was just curious about whether whether the sewage treatment plant itself is receiving direct payment from the places that are grants in lieu of taxes.
No, grants in lieu of taxes, that's payments in lieu, that's taxation. That does not go towards the water wastewater budget.
But you see where I'm going with this. So would they be billed separately then, or
Well,
the
yeah.
grants in lieu of taxes cover their expenses municipally as well?
Well, they would pay their tax bill and they would also receive a water bill. So they would be contributing towards it with their water bill.
Okay, basically my question was, are they receiving a water bill?
Oh, well, for sure, anybody connected should be receiving a water bill, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And if there are any other questions?
Mike Cameron here, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, and, well, maybe take the section and read out what journal number it is.
It's under operating expenses, and it doesn't really have a number, but it's water meter replacement. It's at the very end of that section. There's an indication as a budget for $17,843.
Yes, it's about half a dozen or so lines from the very bottom, members. That's the $17,843. That's the line item, sir?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
End of life meters. There's a lot of the meters in the village that are been around for many, many years. The end of life, are we charging the homeowner to replace those meters, or are we eating the cost for that? Considering we own the meters, are we in a position that we'll be able to afford this if the costs are downloaded to us? Or are we recouping it from the homeowner?
Yeah, I don't know if we have it in our bylaw. I'll turn to staff in that, because I know when the water meters were first installed, the homeowner was paying for them. But at the very time you got that bill in the mail, it was offset 100% by a contribution of the reserves from the water and sewer in those days. So there was and I'm going by very good memory, because I remember getting my water and sewer bill, and it showed cost of water meter, let's say $350. I'm not sure if that was the number, and then it was offset by contribution from the water and sewer reserve $150. So to me, that's interpreted as the homeowner or the property owner was paying for it, but I'll turn to staff and see if they have any more clarification in terms of a bylaw or whatever we may have on the books for that.
Thank you, Your Worship. So maybe just to point out, the meters were all installed around the same time,
Yes.
several years ago, so they are coming up on their life cycle, end of their life cycle. The staff are bringing a report back to council to seek council's direction. It's a policy question, quite frankly.
Okay.
They should be doing that within the next couple of meetings, I believe, Your Worship.
Okay. So do you hear the response, Mr. Cameron? So staff are bringing forward a report, a policy recommendation, and the expectation is that in the next couple of council meeting cycle, that'll come to the council table, right?
Yeah, I think that's a conversation that we need to have, because the way I read the bylaw, it states that if the homeowner damages the water meter, they're responsible for the cost, but haven't found anything about end of life. So I was concerned because there is quite a few meters coming up for renewal. That's a substantial cost, so
Yeah,
it's a
indeed.
good conversation to have.
Indeed, yes, and as Mr. Robinson pointed out, the water meters, other than new builds since the time the water meters were installed, they were all installed at the same time, or the same year. If there aren't any other questions on that page, or the,
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I have one more question to Kirsten
yes,
regarding 174371 transfer to reserves. So in 2020, we had a zero transfer to our reserves.
Oh, no, actually, I am sorry, I meant to update that. The budgeted reserve of 133 was made. Yeah, there should be
It
a
was
number.
made, sorry? Yeah.
so, okay, the treasurer indicated she needed to input that, pardon me, that number. So the 133,147 was the 2020 budget, and the actual is that we did make that contribution to the reserve.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and I have one more question here. Now I've lost my place. I can bring up the question later, Kristen, that's fine. It's not really affecting this portion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Foster. So we'll go to the next page.
Yeah.
Is that,
Go ahead, we'll go to the last page.
yep, go ahead. You have a question, Mr. Cameron?
Yeah, well, we were just talking about reserves. I had a question about reserves, but we can finish the last page and then we can go back to that question.
Sorry, reserves in general or in terms of the,
Just reserves
in general? Yep, okay, yep, no problem. So any questions on the last page? Okay, not hearing any. So, want to get to some next steps here, and any, sorry, Mr. Cameron, you had a question on reserves, and is that the page that staff provided?
Well, it's just a general life question with all the paperwork. There's not, it says administration number 138. It's under new. It's cannabis reserve. It indicates that we're going to be setting up a new reserve for cannabis of a contribution of $5,000. I just would like to have a clarification on what direction we're going to be going with that reserve.
Yep, and our treasurer can respond to that.
Yeah,
Kristen?
this was actually between drafts of the budget, between budget meetings, we were notified that by the province, we would be receiving $5,000 to assist with, cannabis-related issues such as policy-making, items such as that. So until we use that, it has to be held somewhere, so it
Okay.
will be in a reserve.
So that, okay, just to clarify, so back, I guess a couple of years ago now, when the province indicated, or it was asking, would your municipality allow a cannabis outlet, and we indicated, and they said if you said yes, you would get an amount of money to $5,000. So this is the money we've received, and you're parking it in a reserve called Cannabis Reserve. That's where the money came from. And
Correct.
Kirsten is saying yes. Does that answer your question, all right, Mr. Cameron?
It does, and are we going to be building on that reserve in future budgets to ensure that we have monies put aside in case we have any cannabis related problem?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, that just depends on whether we get any more funding from the province for that.
Right,
Okay,
so,
thank you.
yeah, no indication at this point that the municipality would be needing to put money, at least in a cannabis reserve, whether there's some other aspects related to a circumstance where we do have, I know that council could make that consideration there, so what would the need be for the municipality to have dollars available? So what the treasurer is indicating at this point, the 5,000 and any money in the future, because I think the province has indicated there'd be, because we said we'd be a willing municipality to have a retail cannabis outlet, and the sharing of dollars over a certain amount would be distributed to municipalities. With that money would be parked in the cannabis reserve, unless otherwise directed by council. Great. If there aren't any other questions, so just to, oh,
Sorry,
sir.
Mr. Mayor, Bob.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Foster.
I found that item I was looking for. Kirsten, 174190 under the wastewater budget.
Yeah, okay, maybe just give us a moment to get back to that page. And the line item again, Mr. Foster?
Page 1, operating expenses. The line item is 174190. $1,500 fee exemptions approved by council for Lions Club and Friends of the Rito. So is that expense being absorbed by the water plant?
Yes, it's being absorbed by the water wastewater budget.
Well, should that not come out of, anyway, I guess it'll take a motion to council, but it seems unfair that the cost is being borne by the people that pay for the wastewater sewage, or the sewage treatment plant or the water treatment, as opposed to the entire municipality.
Yeah, well, typically, we generally budget water and wastewater related items within that budget, but that's something that we could circle back to at some point. It would be a policy issue. Yeah, certainly a discussion we could have, but before we do that, I would seek the auditor's advice to ask him if it's appropriate, because we do have to be very careful. There are specific rules for the water wastewater budget. The province is fairly picky about that.
So,
No, I can certainly understand that, but as I say, for the council to hand the bill over to the sewage treatment plant, it seems unfair. Anyway, we can certainly discuss this later on in council.
well, and I think the treasurer has making a note, and she'll ask for a comment from the auditor on that as well, to ensure that we follow, notwithstanding what we might want to do, the provincial legislation in terms of the, quote-unquote users pay for the service, which then leads into your good question, who's the user in this case. So Kirsten's made a note of that, and we can certainly get a comment back from the auditor and see what options are available to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Again, anybody going through their notes in terms of any of the line items? And so just a bit of a recap. I'm just being handed a note here. Yes, in terms of the library, and I'm going to turn to our treasurer for comment on that, please.
Yes, so I guess now would be the appropriate time to discuss. The library budget, as I say, was presented by Mary Kate to council at the very first meeting. So their request of us, the levy, is on the administration budget on page 3,
Okay.
line
Just,
item 119.
So did you hear that, members? If you go to in your folders under administration, page 3, line
Yeah,
119.
and just to refresh council's memory, that in addition to this request, Mary Kate and the library board's budget indicated they were requesting an additional 3,000, so that was going to be the discussion.
Right, so that $3,000 is
not
not
in
in
the budget.
our package.
That's correct.
So it goes back to your earlier questions. So yes, we have received the library budget. And in the village grant of, and that's the annual, that's roughly usually the annual amount, is that what the number that we've got in here now, the $96,000?
Correct.
And the ask from the library is for an additional $3,000 this year.
That's correct.
And that's always done on an ask basis.
Well, the extra 3,000 brings us back to the discussion about their capital expenses, I think, so they were going to reinstitute.
So while council may have
Yeah.
a conversation around this in the future from, well, I don't want to use the word policy, but how we move forward, the current ask is for $3,000. And my suggestion, council, is that we get, some clarification that we all want to understand in terms of the library reserve and what's it for, and other aspects of that. In the meantime, that we include, add $3,000 to the budget that's being presented. And if you put that in a context, round numbers, 1% of tax
Is
levy is
approximately
$30,000 roughly. So 3,000 would be, 1/10 of that. Put in perspective, I think it's reasonable at this juncture to say to staff, yes, please include that in the budget. So and if we did, where would that line item change? It would be the 119 line item would go from 96,000 to 99,000.
Yes, correct.
And I guess I'll go say this. I don't want to be presumptive, but that'll be something council will consider moving the draft forward. If anybody that does not want that to happen, please speak up.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Foster.
Yes.
I would very much like to see the library's budget or proposed budget be laid out in the same format as our own. Actuals from 2018, 2019, and 2020, as opposed to just budget 2020 and budget 2021. This current budget doesn't give us any idea how they allocated funds or how much was received in terms of grants or donations. And currently, according to our reserve sheet, their library reserve has jumped $15,000 in the last year. So it's interesting to know just how much money is been expended and how much has gone into reserves.
Well, Mary Kate provides their library budget, so I guess that would be a discussion with Mary Kate and the format in which she presents it.
Well, can we request a more in-depth budget?
I can ask for it.
Yep.
Very good, thank you.
Kirsten can do that on our behalf. In the meantime, Mr. Foster, are you all right with adding this year $3,000 to the library grant?
Yes, certainly. If that's necessary, we can go ahead and do it, but I certainly would like some of those questions answered as well.
Yep, we can do that in the future. Thank you. So,
Mike Cameron here, I have a question.
yes, go ahead, Mr. Cameron.
On our reserve balance sheet that we received, there's an indication here that we have a reserve fund for the library of $99,051. Is that our reserve fund, or is that the library's reserve fund?
It is 100% the libraries.
That's correct, but as the financial statements are reported as consolidated, it's listed on our financial statements, but that is the library board's.
Did you hear the clarification
so
from
that
our
is-
treasurer, Mr. Cameron?
Yeah, so that's $99,051 if I understand correctly. That's money within the library itself, its budget.
Correct.
It's their reserve budget.
Correct.
Correct. We don't have any control over that. Is that correct?
No, the library,
The library board.
brings the only involvement of the municipality is, I guess, if you were the facilitate the dollars being put into a bank account, if you will. And because they're at the end of the year, it's part of the municipal consolidated finances, so it provides that transparency as to where the dollars came from.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. I just, and the reason why I'm asking is, I think that Council Malloy has brought the point up a few times about us owning the building, and I keep repeating the fact that the library had signed a document stating that it would be responsible for the repairs. A little bit of research that I've done over the last few days, I feel that perhaps Councillor Malloy is on the right track there. I'd like to see Council have a discussion about removing that item from the library's contract and for the municipality to take over the maintenance of that building to ensure that it stays in a state of good repair. And the library seems to be having struggles managing a consistent budget for those repairs, and their operational budget they seem to have under control. A little bit more clarification, like Councillor Foster has indicated, would be something beneficial for us to review. So I do agree with the $3,000. I think we should give them what their ask is, and I think that in the future, when we have a conversation, it would be relevant for us to establish a budget item or a budget line within our budget, so that we can contribute money yearly to that library to make sure that the building stays in good standing. It receives over 17,000 visits a year over the last couple of years. This year is a little bit different, as indicated in the budget that she presented. It was down 49%, so it's significant. There's a significant interaction with our public to that library, so I think it would be something that would be beneficial for not only the library, but for people that use it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Cameron. Yeah, we are, council already, having this discussion, I can't remember if it was at a budget meeting or a council meeting, and I indicated that council would indeed, we've already agreed that we'll have a conversation about this in the coming, in the near future, certainly not in the next council meeting, in terms of getting clarification of roles and responsibility and the reserves. So the important part today is everybody agreeing to provide an additional $3,000 into the library grant from the municipality. Any other specific questions at this point from any members? Otherwise, I'd get some clarification from staff. So, looking at the budget that's presented, and again, I want to, I think it's important for everybody to, not just council, but for the public to know that staff have done an extremely good job in bringing forward a zero budget, if you will, for council to work from, and with the additional recommendations. So a lot of hard work by staff, and very clearly presented, as they've done in the past in terms of previous years' actuals, last year's budget and actual, and then the recommendation or the outline for this year. So I want to extend on behalf of council and the folks in American Wolford our appreciation for that, for council's consideration. In bringing this forward as a draft as it is, can we just get a clarification, what kind of a percent increase is there or is there not in this budget? So sometimes you kind of get lost in, here we are, we've been an hour and 50 minutes roughly, a lot of great questions by members of council and great responses from staff to the line items. Kind of forgets where are we in the lay of the land in terms of taxation this year.
So, Your Worship, the draft as it sits before you is still at 0%.
Yep.
Should council wish to include $3,000 for the library budget, it would increase commensurate with that.
Yep.
And I don't think I missed anything, but I don't think I heard anything in your discussions other than that would increase the percentage of tax rate increase this year.
Okay. And just to review it, because it's always important, while, we are, we can utilize dollars from reserves, and we're contributing to reserves, so it's a bit of a balance there. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but our treasurer is nodding her head that, we are making contribution to reserves as well as utilizing the reserves to a degree.
Yeah, it's a blend, Your Worship. I think the treasurer provided you with a summary. So the major change this year, the significant change would be the reduction to the contribution to the infrastructure reserve is $17,000 approximately.
Yes,
this year.
right, because we're utilizing to a degree, not exclusively, reserves that the taxpayers have built up over the years, and we use those dollars for their benefit in the municipality.
Correct, Your Worship.
Right. So at the moment, we're sitting at it might be a point one way or the other, as in a decimal point one way or the other, looking at a zero budget at this particular point.
But very close to it, Your Worship.
As you say, may change. For example, with the $3,000, I don't want to hold anybody to the number at the moment until staff brings forward in we'll say formally the draft budget for council to consider moving into a passed budget, passing a budget, not passed. That's great. Okay. So in terms of next steps, it's to the benefit of council and to the ratepayers that staff would put together similar to what they've done in previous years, a PowerPoint summarizing the highlights and the key aspects of the draft budget. And because we cannot have a public meeting for people to see it, it'll be put on our website. And after today's discussions, putting it in the right format, bringing this draft back to council for approval. I'm not sure whether staff would be doing that for our next meeting, which is this coming Monday or on May the 10th. I know we're always sensitive to one does have to pass municipalities pass their budget so they can get the tax rates and blend them in with the county and the school taxes. So is there any reason from a staff perspective that could not come back to council for this coming Monday's meeting?
If that's council's wish, I believe we could do that, Your
Okay,
Worship.
and so I go to staff member, council. You're comfortable with, after our discussions today, that staff bring forward the draft budget for consideration at this coming council meeting on the 26th. So are you good with that, Mr. Malloy?
Certainly.
And Mr. Foster?
Yes.
And Mr. Cameron?
Is this allowing for public input? Enough time for the public to review the draft budget?
What we do is staff will be similar as we have in past years. We provide the high level draft budget for folks to see. It's not in that quote unquote input perspective. This is the process we've utilized very, very well on behalf of the residents of the municipality. So we would continue that practice. So we'll bring that forward.
Yeah, I understand that. I think it's essential that we allow some time for the public to send in their comments in regards to the budget. Staff has done a fantastic job, and I'm ecstatic that our reserves are going up. But I think part and parcel of a budget is allowing participation from our municipal ratepayers to have some say in what they think of the presented budget. So I'd like to make sure that they have that time to do so.
So what we could do is, if members agree, is the if you like that PowerPoint or highlighted presentation that we would typically do in public have on the website. I'm not sure how quickly they're going to be able to put that together, and then have that on the website. And we could probably have it up tomorrow.
I believe we could.
Go to staff. Our treasurer is indicating she's already got that in ready
In
to
the
go.
works. We're almost ready to go.
And with the concurrence that this is a good draft to move forward with, they'll have it on the municipal website tomorrow, being Wednesday, so that would be up on the website, and then they can bring forward the draft to council on Monday. So, you are with that, Mr. Helpme?
Yes, fine.
Okay, and everybody, and remember, it is a draft that would come to council. Council obviously have to pass it, you know, if everybody's in agreement with it. So that'll be the direction of staff. Not hearing any objections to that. And anything else from a staff perspective we need to do in terms of today's meeting? Great, again, I want to, you know, the budget's not passed, but, you know, a huge amount of I'll say, most of the work has been done, needed by staff so far for council to have a great conversation and deliberations on our 2021 budget. And having said that, we do have a confirmatory bylaw, so I'll ask Mr. Helpme, would you be that mover, sir?
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Malloy, would you be the seconder? Thank you. Be it hereby resolved that bylaw 2021 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the special council meeting of April the 20th, 2021 be read a first and second time, and that bylaw 2021 be read a third and final time and passed. All in favor? Sorry. In favor, Mr. Malloy?
Yes.
And Mr. Foster?
Yes.
And Mr. Cameron?
Yes.
And Mr. Helpme?
Yes.
That's carried, thank you. And I do have a motion to adjourn, and I'd ask Mr. Cameron, would you make that motion?
Yes.
Thank you. And Mr. Foster, you would second?
Yes.
Thank you. Be it hereby resolved that this special meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Village of Mayor Wolford does now adjourn at 2:58 p.m. until the next regular meeting of council on Monday, April the 26th, 2021 at 2 p.m. or until the call of the mayor is subject to need. That's not a debatable motion, so I'll say all in favor, and unless I hear anybody object, I will declare the motion carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye now.